Everybody has a favorite Martin Luther King Jr. quote. And no, I'm not going to have a dream this morning. But I do want to call your attention to a quote that I think is largely ignored, but that serves to make the point I want to make this morning. In his stride toward freedom, he was talking about the very kinds of issues I'm talking about, and he said this: in short, he said, we must work on two fronts. On the one hand, we must continue to resist the system, which is the basic cause of our lagging standards. On the other hand, we must work constructively to improve the standards themselves. There must be, and I love this, there must be a rhythmic alternation between attacking the causes and healing the effects. Why don't they carve that one on somebody's cornerstone? Because that's really, really says it all. Saves you a little time, Jerry, because you're going to, these things tend to grow, so I'm going to cut this a little short. What do we tell our children? What should we tell our children and grandchildren? Yes, steel them against the shock of racism. Let them know that it's very likely that something untoward will happen. Yes, remind them of battles overcome. Point out to them that some of us, in fact, most of us who've achieved some measure of success in this world, likely have some mud on our boots from crossing that not yet dry stream, but we crossed it. Tell them those things, but tell them also this: the salient fact of black life in America today is not denial of opportunity, for those who would grasp it. The new and powerful truth of our situation is simply this: the stream is crossable. The stream is crossable. That's great good news, and it may be true for most of us for the first time in our history in this country. And we treat it as an inconvenient fact. What powerful white people use, whatever they used to think about black boys and girls, corporate America today needs them. But it needs them smart and curious and computer savvy and all the obvious things that so many of our boys and girls are not getting or not becoming. We're past the day when bustling factories and powerful trade unions made the mere willingness to work hard sufficient to guarantee a good income. These days, you have to know something and show yourself ready to learn a good deal more. I'm not talking here of intellectual genius, by the way, only of a willingness to make the sort of exertion academically that good athletes routinely make physically. We can do it. Some of our young people are making that exertion. I was recently in San Diego at the annual conference of the National Association of Black Journalists. And even at a time when journalism is struggling to redefine itself, when jobs are fewer in the business, and where there's less emphasis on diversity, and when the future of journalism itself is as clouded as it's ever been in my lifetime, these young people are doing what they can to retool themselves. They're learning new skills, making new contacts, calling on us old heads in the business for help and advice. There's an interesting thing about these young people. They have parents or mentors who understand the importance of being prepared, even in the face of incomplete opportunity. I'm encouraged by parents and mentors who sacrifice and cajole and nag their children into trying hard, into being twice as good, as we used to say, if that's what it takes. And I am deeply distressed by the young people who are not striving, whose parents and advisors focus on how unfair things are and not on how possible things are. They are self-destructively cynical. They think they've given up on white people when in fact they've given up on themselves. They languish on street corners and in prisons, not because they prefer those haunts, but because they doubt that much else is possible. A wise man once said, "Whether you believe you can succeed or believe you cannot, you're right." Well, life is still no crystal staircase, as Langston Hughes observed, but success is possible. It is this fact that our children must hear from us and take to heart, even while we continue to consider and work against racial unfairness. It is unwise and untrue to tell our children that because Barack Obama is in the White House, the world they inhabit is suddenly fair. But I think it is worse not to tell them that the waters have in fact receded to the point where crossing is possible. Let me end with a story of a lady who, finding herself in dire and undeserved financial straits, asked the Lord to let her win the lottery. Well, she prayed, and she prayed quite earnestly. But when they held a drawing at the end of the week, she hadn't won. Next Monday, she's back on her knees. "Lord, my son may have to drop out of college. The store is threatening to take my flat screen TV. And I can see by the papers that you let people less needful and less holy than I am to win major jackpots. Lord, I need to win the lottery." Again, nothing. "Lord," she said the third week, "didn't you promise to bear your servants up lest they dash their foot against the stone? Well, Lord, I'm just about stone broke. I need to win the lottery." And then, in the still of her room, she heard this voice: "Cut me a break, buy a ticket." We've gotten very good at making demands or earnest requests or supplications for what we need. We demand that the government improve our schools, that employers cut us some slack, that white people stop being so racist. And it's okay to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But while we are demanding that other people do what they ought to do, we need to do what we ought to do. We need to remember, for example, that the most influential educational resource a child can have is a parent who cares. And we need to admit that sometimes parents are the missing ingredient in our children's success. We need to acknowledge that the culprits in our children's failure often share our skin color, our zip code, and sometimes our street address. What shall we tell the children? The stream may not be dry, but the stream is crossable. You can make it. We will help you make it if you try. Buy a ticket. Thank you, Jerry.